If you enjoy watching Common Ground online, please consider making a tax-deductible donation at lptv.org. Lakeland Public Television presents Common Ground, brought to you by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota. Hi, welcome to Common Ground. I'm your host, Scott Knudsen. On this episode of Common Ground, join us as we tour the Beltrami County History Center's new modular exhibits. Diverse contributions from the community, including the Leech Lake Tribal College, help set the record straight on Beltrami County's early history.
Well, my name is Nicole Foss, and I am here at the Beltrami County History Center with our newest exhibit, Trails Through Time, the History of Beltrami County, and it's a very, very exciting day for all of us because this exhibit has been a long time in coming, and we couldn't be happier with it, and we're very, very excited to share it with the county. I'm the former director of the Beltrami County History Center. Actually, my last day was the end of June. Well, this exhibit, Trails Through Time, is an exhibit that tries to cover as much of county history as we could fit into our 2,000 square foot exhibit space. So we organized it thematically, it's not organized chronologically, and we cover many, many different topics from the fur trade, a more recent Ojibwe history, we cover paleo environment, first peoples in the area, logging, surveying, homesteading. There's so many different topics that are covered in this exhibit, and it was a huge group undertaking. We had many, many people from around the county, from Red Lake, from Leech Lake contribute content. And so it's really like a great big group project that represents a number of voices from around the county and a lot of themes in county history. This exhibit was made possible by a generous grant from the George W. Nielsen Foundation, and I worked with the designer and constructor Steve Sundahl, visual arts professor from BSU, to make it so that the structures itself could be up for about 10 years, but the cases, we can switch out what's on display. You know, if we want to get a smaller grant or have some people do a specific project, you know, to feature like something different in a case, it's very easy to do that. So this is a very flexible display setup that we have now at the History Center. And I'm thinking that probably at least in the next 10 years, you know, we'll still be covering broad Beltrami County history as we should, because that's part of our mission, but we can always be changing what's on display and bringing fresh perspectives and new things for people to look at.
Well, I always consider myself first and foremost an artist and designer. I do teach. I teach at Bemidji State University in our design program, and we also have an exhibit program there. I also like to say that I practice what I teach. So whenever a project like this comes along, this is my third time doing this museum, so it wasn't totally new to me, but that's my background anyway, as I've always been an artist and graphic designer. There's 3 galleries. This is Gallery A. I was commissioned to design and construct all of their exhibits for a new exhibit. We're hoping that the cases that I built and the graphics will service them for maybe 10 years or something. And all of the cases are designed so that they can change out artifacts, so they can change the content as they go if they want. But we went into this thinking, let's make this a bit more of a permanent set of structures. And so that was my job, was to come up with a concept for how it would look, design cases, build them, and also apply graphics to the walls, choose the colors, things like that. You can see in this series of walls here, of course, I did all the organization of the content, visual photographs, text, all of that, designed it into the structure, but I built all of this. These are freestanding structures that are built out from the wall that have cases, shadow boxes, whatever you want to call them, set into them. And so all of that was part of this project. It started out in my studio, I had about half of these in there at a time, roughed out, and then I'd haul them up here and lock them together to create the wall structures you see. We had a very, very short deadline on this one. In terms of a project like this, it was probably 6 months. And so right away I had to get building before I even really knew what the content would be. This whole idea of the rooftops kind of developed. My wife and I were driving around downtown Bemidji and looking at some of the tops of the buildings and things like that. I credit her. She mentioned that, wow, wouldn't it be cool if this kind of reflected the inside of a street in a city? And so that was where I started, was just kind of designing these kind of rooftop things as a way to thread the whole exhibit together, I guess. And so then after that comes choosing fonts and colors that go into the space. Again, I'd credit my wife for helping on the colors. She's very good with colors. So we started there and continued on. Once Nicole started giving me the files with all the photos and text, then it was a process of trying to get that to fit into these panels that you see here. So. One of the biggest challenges on this exhibit was there was a lot of text, and this is not a big museum, and we wanted to cover 6 or 7 different topics, and so trying to fit enough in that would interest people and fit it into the small space that we had. You know, this is not a very big space to keep the type big enough for people to read, and photos big enough so you can see what's going on in there. So I guess that was the biggest challenge for me, was when I got to the point where I had to fit all of the images and text in. That was quite a challenge. So my favorite part is actually staging the artifacts. You know, I like to deal with the artifacts. I mean, for me, that's the funnest part of this, is I learn about the history of our area. I'm from Bemidji, but you know, I keep finding out new things that I didn't know before. So when it comes to this part, that's the easy part. It's fun to kind of stage them and set them up in there so they look a little more dramatic and tell a story. I like the cutouts. It was fun to create some of these figures that are cut out, sort of surprise you as you walk around the corner or something, and they add some dimension to the space, and they add a little bit of a persona to an area. In fact, I had them all in my shop, and that was interesting in itself, just having these little figures around, and I'd be startled every once in a while by them. But I like the wigwam in the other room. That was partly because it was a fun experience. We had the AmeriCorps students in, and we basically had to cut that into several pieces to get it through the door and then reassemble it, and it was just kind of an interesting memory for me, I guess, is the process of bringing that in. But I think it looks great in the space, and it adds a nice dimension to it. There were some challenges in dealing with some of the artifacts because of their age or their delicacy. There's a couple letters over in the Beltrami case that were written in, I believe, in the late 1700s that have to be treated in a particular way so that no damage will come to them while they're on display. So, you know, basically you're sandwiching them in plexiglass. There's a few of them here where, you know, you have to be pretty sensitive with the material so that it doesn't degrade and damage the artifact. Many of them are pretty sturdy though. You know, a lot of these objects here, you know, are pretty easy to hang without having to be too concerned. So.
I'm a volunteer here at the History Center and have been for about 5 years. And every day I come in is just like a whole new finding. Going through old things that have been contributed and things that I used to know in a different way, and now I've become much more aware of the historical value of things. And so this is just a delightful place to be. This is the music and entertainment section of our new exhibit. This little spot in the exhibit is one that I'm particularly fond of, and I did some research and am waiting to be able to do more and add more to it. And it has some very, very interesting artifacts, and it has some very interesting narrative information about what goes on today as well as what has gone on historically from the whole of the county, out in the townships as well as in the Bemidji area. This is an 1877 Thomas Edison phonograph that uses wax cylinders to play music. And this is a working model today. It was donated several years ago and is now on display for everyone to see and enjoy. Back here we have a zither, and it is also working. You can see the key that is used to tune it. This was used in 1812. So you can let your imagination just go wild and think about the parties in the home where this lived and the opportunities that people had to sing and play and dance together. This violin is a John Morrison violin. We have a collection named after John Morrison, and this is his personal violin. It isn't in top shape, it's historic in nature, and so you can come and stand by that and think about past times and the fiddling that went on in families and dancing and that kind of thing. Over here we have some items that are from the Kiddies Band in Bemidji, and we have quite a lot of research in this area that you're welcome to come and read about. We're looking for more things from more bands as well as other kinds of musical entertainment. Actually, we don't have so many things. We have a lot of written records, but we're looking more for artifacts that you maybe have in your home up in the attic that you're thinking nobody cares about and what will happen when I go. Well, here we are. Just bring them on in. We'd love to see them, and they might even get in a case for this exhibit. One of the bugles, this silver bugle here, is from the Solway Band, and the others are three different styles. One is a type used during the war type of bugle. The wonderful little poof on the top of the cap is a historic thing too. Well, one of the things that I think these artifacts tell us about our local culture is musically we have the phonograph that was developed by Edison. And you want to come in and look at that and then think about the MP3 player or some of the musical recording devices that you're used to in today's world, all developed because we had a beginning with something like this. Some of these pieces are pieces that were played in homes for entertainment as well as music when we first came to this area. When you think about where we are today compared with where we were 100 years ago, and the kinds of instruments that were played, the way they were played. We had a lot of small bands, children's bands, Kiddie Band in Bemidji, and that's where some of these are from. It makes you begin to think about the wonderful things that went on in the past that we now have built on and developed in a whole new way. These artifacts have come to us from people in the county primarily who have donated them, trusting this museum to take care of them and make them available for other people to be able to see and appreciate and enjoy and jog their own memory. We do have some artifacts that were acquired through digs and more formal archaeological methods, but these we are dependent on people who live in this county primarily or grew up here, donating things that they are fond of and that they want other people to know and share. If you have an item that you think is historic in nature and is something that you want to share, please call the History Center or put it in your vehicle and bring it down or strap it on the bike, or maybe it is an old bike. Bring it on in and we'll talk about it. See the director of the History Center and what it is exactly that you need to do.
I'm Steve Kerrin. I'm a board member and secretary of the Beltrami County Historical Society. And I worked as a volunteer and did research on the paleo environment of present-day Beltrami County for this current exhibit at the History Center. What highlights the change in climate, in vegetation and landscape features, and animals and birds present through the last 12,000 years or so. Well, I think one of the things that's very interesting and profound is the great change in landscape and climate that has gone on over the last 10 or 12,000 years in North America and specifically northern Minnesota. There was a period called the Wisconsin Glacial period where there was a lobe of ice which was like an arm of ice that retreated and advanced several times during the last 80,000 years or so, that influenced the topography, deposition of soil, and creation of what they call moraines, and eventually creation of lakes and rivers. The glaciers were here until about 12,000 years ago, and they were here for, the Pleistocene era was, a couple million years, 2.5 million years. And about 12,000 years before present, the glaciers started to retreat and disappear because of the gradual warming of the climate. And then from that point on, the retreat of the glaciers first, and then the climate change influenced the landscape features, the soils, lakes, rivers, vegetation, animal, and bird life.
I think that our area right here, northern Minnesota, is so rich in history. If you just think about the fur trade that started in the mid-1600s and went to about 1840 is a good year to say that that was when it really started fizzling. You're talking almost 200 years. And such an important component of that was Native Americans. None of that history would exist today if it hadn't been for American Indians. They were the backbone of all of that, whether it was transportation vessels, whether it was food, whether it was the procurement end of a big industry that was worldwide. Furs back in the late 1600s through the 1700s into the 1800s was the oil of its day. Fortunes were made on the fur trade. It was great in demand in Europe. But I think what's exciting about this new display here at the museum is that it gets away from so much of Paul Bunyan logging, which I'm not trying to downplay the importance of the logging era, but it was such a minuscule period of that time. So you're talking almost 200 years of the fur trade, and so we know so little of it and how important it was. Just would never have been a fur trade if it hadn't been for American Indian people. And not only were they so important in that procurement end, they were so important in feeding the fur trade. With voyageurs, we hear about pemmican and peas and ground corn. The real staple of the fur trade, which kept people alive, especially here in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Ontario, was wild rice. You read over and over again fur traders saying, build your posts near large stands of wild rice and where there's Indian communities, because that's what's going to be your sustenance through the winter. And fur traders talking about they would have starved on a particular winter if it hadn't been rice that they'd gotten from Native Americans. You know, we think about cowboys and Indians so much. That lasted for what, 40, 50, 60 years, something like that at best in the West. We're talking this fur trade here in northern Minnesota was 200 years, and how it incorporated the culture of Native Americans and the intermarriage. It's kind of, I'm not going to say it's a halcyon of white Indian days, but it comes about as close to it as you're going to come. And all of our history classes talk about the discovery of the Mississippi. They give credit to these white guys when there have been Native Americans who have been living there for thousands of years, making a living there. I mean, their food, their culture, all of that. We talk about discoverers of the Mississippi. We talk about the first European men that got there. Not trying to denigrate somebody like a Henry Schoolcraft, but what the displays do here is they highlight the importance of people who preceded him and maybe had a more of an impact on the local people. A lot of these explorers were people who weren't from here. They were from somewhere else. The only stake they had in northern Minnesota was either for resources or for money, or both. A lot of the people that were the engines for these people that got them to here, got them to the headwaters, were people who lived here. They didn't come from somewhere else, and they didn't leave. They were here. This was their homes. They had a stake in this country. Like, for instance, George Bonga, one of the exhibits here, probably the only one in Minnesota, North America, on a Bonga. But I mean, these were people who not only lived here, but they really loved the land. Their voices exemplify that. I mean, this was a special place to them. This was more than just home. It was an area where it was so abundant and diverse here for a northern temperate climate. The manumin, the wild rice, the sugar maples in this area, the abundance of rivers and lakes that were like a system of highways and roads. And I think that the exhibit here that we have on Explorers of the Mississippi kind of sets that record straight. And I think what's exciting to us on the board of the museum is that this is so even-handed. I've never seen anything in an outstate museum that gives credit where credit is due to Native American people. For instance, the timeline that was done by the Leech Lake Tribal College and edited by Elaine Fleming is just marvelous, and it's setting the record straight on a lot of our history here. And the history of Red Lake, a role that Jody Bolio played in it. And so much credit needs to go to our director, Nicole Foss.
I think the neat thing about working on an exhibit like this is you get a lot of different people involved, and people bring in stories, they bring in knowledge, they bring in items, and they bring to light new things. So it's been really fun to see what's come out of that. Back in February, we had a community input meeting from people all over the area. We had a really good turnout, and what we asked people was, what do you want to see? This is your history museum. What do you want to see here? What don't you want to see? You know, what makes history fun and exciting to you? And we got a lot of really important feedback from people. And out of that, we got a couple of new board members. We got a lot more people who became involved in the History Center one way or another. And it's just grown so that this has become much more an exhibit that has many contributors. It's not one or two historians sitting in a room and reading over books and saying, what should we put in this exhibit? We asked the public over the last 2 years. We've had educators come in. We've had content contributed by the Tribal College. There's just many different people that have contributed and made this possible. So when I look around, I see many different voices and I see many different perspectives, and it's really cool because it means that no one person walks in and knows every single thing, but there's always things to learn here.
I've lived in this community most of my life, and to me, to have a realization of so much that has happened outside of the lifespan I've had on this patch of earth here, I think it's on one level it opens up people's eyes to their own community, their own natural setting. I think it also, and the exhibit on my left here, I think opens awareness to other cultures or to the original cultures that were here. I think that this exhibit particularly does a really nice job of bringing the history of the area and Native American population into it. So I think that it opens up people, or hopefully broadens their horizons a little bit on what the history of Bemidji is, or Beltrami County.
As a resource, this museum gives us a sense of who we are, where we've come from as the Beltrami County culture. And we are different than any place else actually on the globe because of things that have occurred here. Logging industry, the wonderful woodland and the natural setting that we live in. When you come here, you get a sense of the total overview of that and where you fit in personally. The people that come here come because they have a need to find their roots, if you will, to find what makes our area what it is today. When you come to the exhibit, you get to see the whole overview. And we have all different kinds of information that we are showcasing here. The fur trade, the Native American community, education, the college, the K-12 system, early glacial times. It's all right here, and you can come for an hour, for a day, or back several times.
You know, there's a lot of different ways that people can become involved in the History Center, lots of different ways to support the organization. I started here as a volunteer. There's always cool projects to work on. We've been digitizing our image collection and putting that online as a searchable database to make it more accessible. We're digitizing manuscripts. We're carrying out an object inventory. So anyway, there's a lot of different ways that people can become involved in the museum end. Also events, you know, we have events throughout the year, so anyone who likes organizing are participating in that. We're always looking for new ideas, we're always looking for new members. We have a newsletter. If anyone is interested in getting involved or donating an artifact to the Beltrami County History Center, first of all, we're open Wednesday through Saturday from noon to 4. So those are the hours, those are the days. We have a website, beltramihistory.org. You could call 444-3376 and speak to the director, and there's a lot of opportunities for people to get involved and volunteer. Or if you're walking through the exhibit and you say, hey, I have a really cool homesteading artifact I'd like to loan or donate, just give us a call or send us an email, and we'll make that happen, because we want this to be something where the community is curators with this exhibit as well.
Well, Abraham Lincoln said that a country with little regard for its past will have little worth remembering in its future. And I think what this does, this museum, is it really gets back to our history, our past here, right back to the beginning. And I think that's something you can get here on a summer afternoon when you haven't got anything better to do. Come on down here to the Beltrami County Historical Society and read everything that's posted by these exhibits, and I'm sure that the public is going to be amazed and be really proud to have the Beltrami County Historical Society here in Bemidji.
Thank you for watching. Join us again next week for another episode of Common Ground. If you have an idea for a Common Ground piece that pertains to North Central Minnesota, email us at legacy@lptv.org or call us at 218-333-3014. To view any episode of Common Ground online, visit us at lptv.org. To order episodes or segments of Common Ground, call 218-333-3020. Common Ground is brought to you by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people November 4th, 2008. If you enjoyed this episode of Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground, consider making a contribution at lptv.org.